Hello YouTube, this is Scott Grammer and I am the Old Audio Guy. Recently I released the second video in the Phase Linear 700 Rebuild series, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And right after I released that, I got a comment from a viewer asking if I could do a video explaining about harmonic distortion and clipping, both of which I mentioned at the end of that video. So this is that video. We're going to talk about distortion and what it is, and what is harmonic distortion, and what is clipping. Well, here we go. Now, I could make this a very long and drawn-out video, but I'm not going to do that because, well, it would be a long and drawn-out video, and who wants that? So I'm going to try to laser focus this a little bit on just harmonic distortion and distortion itself and clipping. Now, there are lots of different kinds of distortion. Distortion simply means a change in the audio that's going through something that you do not desire. So, for instance, noise added to the sound, that's a distortion, but we don't usually classify it as distortion. We refer to it as noise, and we measure it and classify it differently. Usually when we're talking about distortion, we're talking about harmonic distortion. And harmonic distortion is a change in the waveform that is mathematically related to the original signal. Let me show you what I'm talking about. What you're seeing here is the simplest of all audio waveforms, a sine wave. A sine wave consists of just a single frequency with nothing else added. This waveform is a 100 Hz sine wave, and it sounds like this. If we were to double this frequency, we would be at 200 Hz, which looks and sounds like this. Note that 200 Hz is exactly one musical octave above 100 Hz. This will become important later. Go up another 100 Hz and you get a 300 Hz sine wave, which looks and sounds like this. Do it one more time and you find yourself at 400 Hz, which looks and sounds like this. Now, if you think of that first tone at 100 Hz as the fundamental frequency, then the others, which are multiples of 100 Hz, are harmonics of that fundamental frequency. The first harmonic of any fundamental frequency is the same as the fundamental frequency itself. The second harmonic is always double the frequency of the fundamental, so in this case, the second harmonic is the 200 Hz tone. The third harmonic is the 300 Hz tone, and the fourth harmonic is the 400 Hz tone. You get the idea. Harmonics can go as far as you want to go. You could have a 37th or a 40th or a 5,000th harmonic. When listening to music, there are always harmonics mixed in with the fundamental tones. These harmonics are what give musical sounds their individual timbres or sound qualities. If I play a sine wave at 440 Hz, which is middle A on a piano, it sounds like this. But if I play the middle A key on a piano, it sounds like this. The difference in these two sounds is not frequency, but in the harmonics. The image you're seeing is a spectrum analysis of that 440 Hz sine wave. A spectrum analysis is basically just a graph that shows all the frequencies present in a signal and how loud they are relative to each other. As you can see, there's just one frequency, 440 Hz. The rest of the spectrum is silent. This image is a spectrum analysis of the piano note. As you can see, the strongest frequency is the 440 Hz fundamental. But there is a second harmonic at 880 Hz, a third harmonic at 1320 Hz, a fourth at 1760 Hz, and a fifth at 2200 Hz. There are more harmonics, but they are lower in level than these first ones. So harmonics are a good thing, if they belong in the music. The problem starts when our sound equipment adds harmonics that don't belong. This is harmonic distortion. So let's go back to our first four tones. We'll start with that 100 Hz sine wave just to let you hear what it sounds like once again. Now we'll add a little bit of second harmonic distortion to it. We're going to add a little bit of 200 Hz sine wave to it. Now that's about 5% distortion. That's pretty easily audible, even with second harmonic distortion. We'll switch back and forth a couple of times so you can hear the difference. But now remember, this example I just showed you was of the 200 Hertz second harmonic of the 100 Hertz fundamental. And if you remember, I said that the 200 Hertz second harmonic was musically 1 octave above the fundamental, which means that it is consonant with the fundamental. It's in tune with it. Let's try and add a third harmonic. Here's what that waveform looks like. That's about 5% total harmonic distortion, equally split between the second and third harmonic. We'll switch back and forth a few times to let you hear the difference. Adding in a little bit of third harmonic distortion sounds way worse than adding in a little bit of second harmonic. And the higher you go in the odd order harmonics, that is the 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, etc., the worse it gets. Part of the attraction that people have towards single-ended Class A vacuum tube amplifiers is because they produce quite a bit of second harmonic distortion, but almost no odd order distortion. Second harmonic distortion can often be added in small quantities to music, and it actually sounds a little better, even though it's not as accurate. This is because the second harmonic distortion tends to make the music sound a little bit brighter than it would otherwise. It is a euphonic sound, but not an accurate sound. You might be surprised to learn that some of the signal processing I'm using on my voice right now involves the addition of several percent of second harmonic distortion. When music is reproduced with more than just a little bit of odd-ordered harmonic distortion, it can be very grating on the listener. It can cause listener fatigue and even headaches. Early transistor amplifiers suffered from this problem because of bad design and because of a lack of negative feedback to control their inherent distortion. Manufacturers of audio gear work very hard to reduce the distortion to levels that are so low that you cannot hear it. How low that is depends on what you're listening to. If you're listening to a pure sine wave, which few people do just for fun, you can hear distortion of less than 0.1% pretty easily. But with music, typically if you can keep the distortion under 1%, you're not going to hear it, mainly because your speakers are likely to produce more distortion than that. When you raise the input to an amplifier, its output goes up by the same amount. That is, until it runs out of power supply voltage. When this happens, the amplifier clips. It's called clipping because it looks as though someone took a pair of scissors to the waveform at the top and bottom. Let me show you what it looks like and what it sounds like. For the sake of your speakers and ears, I have kept the volume of the distorted and undistorted signals the same. You're welcome. Let me show you what this sounds like with music. Once again, for the sake of your speakers and ears, I have kept the distorted signal from blowing you into oblivion. You're welcome again. And so you can see that clipping is not a good thing. It sounds terrible, but it does something else. It creates massive amounts of high-order harmonics, and these harmonics get fed to your speakers and go directly to the tweeters, which will toast them to a crisp, crackly crunch very quickly. So the moral of the story is, if you want to play loud, you need a big amplifier so that it doesn't clip. So that's pretty much the end of this video. That's the story of harmonic distortion and clipping. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will answer them as best I can. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.